Green interwebs, it's Jackie K, and welcome for a bonus episode of Golden Sun Dawn of Djinn. You may be wondering what we're doing back on the totally balanced ship. As I mentioned in the live stream, there is an Easter egg specifically tied to this that you can do if you arrange the shipmates, take the tourists, and put them in a particular order. You get to go somewhere a little earlier than usual. In the grand scheme of things, it's fine that I screwed up and didn't actually show this off because we could just come back here at a more appropriate time. But I wanted to at least show off what it's like if you come here quote-unquote early. Players that are more familiar with Golden Sun may be familiar with an Easter egg revolving around which order you pick the passengers to be oarsmen. If you do it in a particular order that throws off the complete balance of the ship goes off course to a deserted island, one that you normally wouldn't have access to until quite a bit later into the game. In the original Golden Sun, this is known as Crossbone Island. However, in Dawn of Djinn, it does bear a different name, but a pretty similar format and spirit, with the biggest difference being the types of enemies you encounter on the island itself. This whole island is an optional dungeon that serves as the toughest challenges that Golden Sun can offer, both in the vanilla experience as well as in Dawn of Djinn. While the puzzles and general layout of this quote-unquote new island remain the same as Crossbone Isles, the battles you encounter are different. And while I guess I could have taken cues from another Golden Sun hard mod and just made all the floors specifically tailored towards the very end of the game, level, experience, engines, and etc., I personally decided to make it so the first few floors would be possible to do the first time you came around through the island, because otherwise, what's the point of coming here early? If you just get hardwalled by a difficulty curve that you don't even realize is meant to encourage you to come back later or something. The downside to this design philosophy is if you do miss out on this Easter egg and end up coming to these islands much later, the first few floors felt a little bit more underwhelming as a result. So, the whole point of this bonus video is to showcase what the difficulty of these first few floors would be like if you came here as soon as possible, being under level 20 like I am currently, rather than the full... what level was I when I came back here in the live stream? It's been so long that I completely forgot. Point being, I felt like I robbed myself of a fun experience, let alone robbing you guys of the pleasure of watching a fun experience. So here we are, about to do Void Island once again. For reference sake, this video will feature the first 4 boss fights of Void Island, along with the technically optional, within an optional dungeon, Djinn Mimic. These battles are tailored in a way so they are technically possible at this point in the game, but you really have to work to get past the fights and get the rewards within them this low of level. With stuff that you can get this early on, like a Ginny Charm and that Pixie Ring, I didn't want to just hand them out for free. Coming here at the more intended time for the Dawn of Djinn playthrough, it made me realize I didn't realize what I was missing out on until it was gone, because I always come here as early as possible in my playtests. So when I actually did the playthrough and had to come here more normally, these first few fights felt a bit underwhelming. And again, that's why I'm making the video here. Now, as you may be seeing, if you actually saw the full length of the video before clicking it, this is a biggie. Between that and the fact that technically I've played through and commentated these fights already, granted in a much more underwhelming way, I'm not going to be commentating this entire video. For the most part, you can just sit back and watch the crazy madness show. I might pan for this video and throw a little post commentary to each of the boss fight if I come across some developer-specific commentary that I think you all might be interested in. For example, I'm not quite sure if the Hobble Goblin works properly or not. It's supposed to work by having some powerful attacks while also using a wide variety of items, but I keep getting paranoid that I didn't actually do it right, because it really feels like that it defends way more than it should, and doesn't use as many items as I thought it would. Yet I'm always paying way too close attention to the Grizzlies with their brutal attack and even more devastating attack boosting techniques, to really pay close attention to that guy and actually see if he's actually working properly. Most of the time that I'm looking, it feels like he defends way too much, and I'm pretty sure he does have the ability to defend, but I kinda got a gut feeling that the defending that he's doing is tied to him trying to use an item, but not knowing how. Which is weird, because I know this guy uses items in Vanilla Golden Sun. It might be some sort of bug with me trying to give him more items than he knows how to use or something. This is what I get for trying to make a mod completely for the editor with very little actual programming foresight in the process. I am pretty happy with how ambitious I was able to do with this project and how much I was able to squeeze in without actually programming anything within it. Especially when the editor was made with Golden Sun 2 in mind, and any functionality that it has with Golden Sun 1 is more of an afterthought. Something that just so happens to work because Golden 1 and 2 are similar enough games. But here we are, I made an entire Golden Sun 1 mod, working on a second mixed version of it, and almost barely touched the Lost Age, because the last time I had a major project with Lost Age was the very first time I touched the editor. But then I decided to work on Dawn of Djinn as a little break, and well, we all know how that went. You're seeing it on screen now. It became more than just a little difficulty mod. Tangent aside, I think we got the general idea of how this fight works. You can see how things would feel much more underwhelming coming here later, especially when I'm pretty sure one of the 3 enemies aren't even working properly. But I think we've seen enough to fight play out to get the general idea of the strategy going into it. The bears, with their ability to boost their attack and being pretty strong as is, are devastating fellows that you really don't want to take for granted. Fortunately, they're fairly vulnerable to status conditions, so putting them to sleep, stunning them, all very good options that you want to explore quite a bit. In addition, at this point you have the Djinni draft, so if one of them gets really out of hand with its boosting, you can just attack it with draft to reset its stats. All part of the general design of this fight. Okay, hope you all enjoy the rest of this fight play out. I'll meet you all back for some more post commentary when we go try to fight the Djinn Mimic. See y'all then. Alright, now it's time for our first attempt against the Djinn Mimic. Yes, first attempt. Unlike last time, we got our work cut out for us. This fight actually gave me more trouble than any of the other quote-unquote boss fights that we do here on Void Island. At least in this totally balanced ship timeline. Granted, it's arguably justified because this is one of the few, if not only way, to have a guaranteed synergy seal ability. And the way you play Dawn of Djinn certainly changes once you do get it. Not to say that everything becomes instantly easy, because every boss fight that you can fight after this guy, I made sure to keep in mind the fact that you have access to guaranteed synergy sealing. But it does change the way you think about fights, considering synergy sealing actually becomes a valid option. But yeah, we may be able to brute force our way through it with a high enough level, but I think we're going to see right away exactly just what makes this fight so devastating. Just the fact that it can summon 4 because it's a Djinn Mimic of that element, and 4 just so happened to have an added side effect of possibly stunning foes. It's a nasty combination with how so many of his abilities tied to sealing synergy, including the Grand Seal that we're seeing here. To emphasize just how hard this fight can be, I decided to leave at least a clip of each of my failed attempts in this video. That may be half the reason why this video in particular is as long as it is. Granted, like, doing 4 bosses in one video doesn't help with that either, but still. Things may be looking rather rough here, but I gotta tell you, out of all the failed attempts I have, this one probably went the smoothest out of all the failed attempts. Yeah! You'll see what I mean when you actually see some of these other failed attempts in action, but yikes. Alright, attempt number 2. Let's hope this goes better than the last one. Spoilers, it won't. Like before, things go sour when Ford enters the field. It's so weird. I feel like this summon is way more broken when it's used against us than when we try to use it. Part of it might just be because we're probably more susceptible to status conditions than some of the bosses are, but yeah, Double 4 is especially brutal. And that's not even the worst part about this run. Just give it a minute. So it's looking bad, but maybe I can revive an ally and slowly build everyone back up. It's kind of like one of the few perks of Dawn of Djinn. Never mind. Just to rub salt into the wound. It did that. Okay, I think at that point I just need to take a break from that fight. We'll maybe do another floor or 2 of this place and then come back for it. Maybe we'll get another level up and that'll be all that we need. Maybe some equipment or something can make that fight easier too. On the topic of the fight that we're actually in, I wouldn't quite call it a pattern, but you might know something familiar about these first 2 floor fights. The first floor we faced was of all enemies from vanilla Crossbone Island, just made a bit tougher with increased stats and a couple new moves. I'm not even sure if the bears actually got any new moves. They were just that thing in of themselves. And then there's the Hologoblin I tried to do something with, but well, I already talked about how that went. Here's kind of a similar idea, where I like the concept of how the succubus work in Vanilla Golden Sun, so I wanted to, even though I had so many ideas of what sort of type of bosses I could make for my take on Crossbone Island, I really like some of the vanilla enemies enough that I wanted to use them as well. So, first few floors, there's a couple of these floors that have familiar faces with a few twists. This fight in particular, the biggest one, is technically the Griffin there is new. It's obviously inspired a lot off the Griffin that appears in Crossbone Island in Vanilla Golden Sun. But in my various brainstorming and playtests, I decided just to take the Griffin and make a new enemy out of it. I'm actually pretty happy with how the Blaze Griffin in particular came out. It could probably even make a whole boss in of itself if I buffed it up a bit and messed around with it a bit more. I just think the whole concept of it being a Fire Griffin, and that's why it specializes in both fire and wind elemental abilities, is pretty cool. It's also one of the first cases of an enemy that I specifically designed around the player being able to have access to Luff. It has access to fire synergy, wind synergy, as well as a fire elemental attack that's not a synergy, and a wind elemental attack that's not a synergy. And the reason for this decision is to make the players think more carefully about whether or not to seal the synergy of the enemy. Basically a concept of pick your poison. If I seal the enemy synergy, it won't be able to use synergy, but because of that, it'll do its non-synergy attacks more often, and it's up to you as a player to decide which is the lesser of two evils. And honestly, this is going to be a theme that we come across with enemies and bosses going forward. You may have the ability to seal everyone's synergy once you actually get access to Luff, but sealing a synergy may not always be the most optimal play. For example, with the Djinn mimics there, sure we could seal their synergy to keep them from doing a lot of attacks to us, but the less synergies that they can do, the more likely they'll be able to do the powerful summons instead. As for the succubus, they're pretty self-explanatory. They're like all the Siren enemies we've seen before, but I liked how they act as a boss fight in Vanilla Golden Sun, so I wanted to implement them in Dawn of Djinn as well. So I just designed these in a way that would complement the abilities that the Blaze Griffin already had. I think that's all I have to say about this boss fight in particular, so I'll leave you all to the rest of the action this fight has to offer, as well as the awesome music that makes up the boss fight theme. actually, original plan was to do this all in one video, but between realizing how long this is gonna be and the fact that I've only recorded post-commentary for half of it, I think it's better to just finish this up now so you all can at least watch some of it while I record the commentary for the rest of it. So there will be an extra bonus video in the future showing the other half of it. I would do it next week, but if I'm recalling the YouTube schedule correctly, there may be a bonus video for Pokemon XG that I want to do next week instead. So if not next week, I guess the week after, assuming that I get around to recording this post-commentary. Probably sometime this month. More likely than not. So I've been Jackie K. Next time we'll do the rest of pre-Toby bound ship Void Island. And you can really see how much of a challenge this particular set of floors can be if you do it as early on as possible. Until then, see y'all later.